heard that title for Satan, the Prince of the Power of the Air? It's one of the most dramatic, kind of mysterious titles in the whole Bible. Well, today we're going to dig in and find out where that idea actually comes from.
Right there in Ephesians, the Apostle Paul calls him the Prince of the Power of the Air. It paints this picture of a rival spiritual authority, literally ruling the atmosphere around us. But where did Paul get such a wild idea? You might be surprised to find out it wasn't from the scriptures he grew up with.
So, to really get this, we have to play detective and trace this concept all the way back to its roots. Our investigation is going to start with the foundational texts of the Hebrew Bible to see if this prince even exists in that world. Let's dive in. Okay, so our first question is pretty simple. Does the original biblical worldview even have room for a competing power up in the heavens? You see, the entire theology of the Hebrew Scriptures is built on this bedrock idea of one single absolute divine authority. There's no power sharing. So when it comes to things like the winds and the air, who's really calling the shots according to these texts?
So our first stop for evidence is the Torah, the Psalms, and the prophets. And what we find is, well, it's incredibly consistent. There's really no debate on this point.
I mean, check out the language here. It's so specific. God doesn't just allow the wind to blow. The text says he drives it. That's active, direct, purposeful control. It's like he's got his hands on the steering wheel. There's no other driver.
And if you thought that was clear, get this next piece of evidence from the book of Numbers. It's even more direct. A wind went out from God. It's not some independent force or a tool used by some lesser spirit. Nope. It's a direct extension of God's own will.
The poetic books then give us this incredible image. They talk about God keeping the winds in his storehouses, only letting them out when he gives the command. So in this view, the sky isn't some contested territory. It's God's private property.
So when you lay out all the evidence, the verdict from the Hebrew Scriptures is absolutely clear. It's unanimous. The wind's origin, its direction, where it goes, its obedience, it all points back to one single source. YHW has total exclusive control over the Ruach, or the wind. Case closed.
Okay, so if the idea of a prince ruling the air isn't in the Hebrew Bible, then where on earth did Paul get it? To find the answer, we have to shift our investigation. We need to look at the world of the first century, a world that was soaked in Greek ideas and philosophy.
For the ancient Greeks, the air, what they called the air, was anything but empty. They saw it as this busy, populated spiritual space, kind of like a supernatural highway between the gods up above and the human world down below. And who was living in this air? Well, beings they called daimones. These were spirits, both good and bad, that they believed were constantly zipping around in the air, directly influencing human lives. You can already see this is a totally different way of looking at the world.
So let's put these two completely different worldviews side by side. This is where it all starts to click together and connect back to our original question.
And while the contrast is just stark, isn't it? On one hand, you have the Hebrew ruach, which is seen as God's own creative breath, a direct tool of his will. But on the other hand, you've got the Greek air, which is this messy, contested spiritual battleground, just filled with all these competing powers.
And here it is. This is the smoking gun. When Paul uses that exact Greek phrase, the ruler of the authority of the air, he's plugging directly into that Greek Hellenistic worldview. The language of a prince with power in the air, it fits the Greek model of daimones like a key in a lock, but it has absolutely no place in the Hebrew model of ruah.
So what our investigation really uncovers is this profound theological evolution. It marks a huge shift in how the spiritual world was being understood at the time.
You can literally watch the idea evolve in 3 clear steps. First, you have pure Hebrew monotheism. God has absolute, total control. Then, that idea runs into Greek dualism, which sees the air as this populated spiritual battlefield. And finally, in the writings of Paul, you see a synthesis of the two. A prince is put in charge of that Greek AR. It's fascinating.
And this brings us right back to the foundational declaration of the Hebrew faith, the Shema. It proclaims this absolute, indivisible unity of God. This core principle just stands in complete opposition to the very notion of a rival prince sharing power over any part of creation, and that includes the air we breathe.
Ultimately, the
The story of the Prince of the Power of the Air proves that ideas are almost never born in a vacuum. They travel, they bump into each other, they merge across cultures. And that leaves us with a really important question to think about. How many of the beliefs we hold today are also the product of the same ancient blending of different worlds?